It's going to be a mild start to Thursday, but it is going to be an unpleasant start for many. Wet and windy weather, strong gusts of wind associated with Storm Babette, but then increasingly wet and windy for central and northern Scotland in particular, with, in places, 70 or even 80 mile-per-hour wind gusts, and that wind driving heavy and persistent rain into eastern Scotland in particular. Angus and Aberdeenshire seeing that rainfall really build up over the next 48 hours. Up until the weekend, with, in places, 200 to 250 millimetres of rainfall. In one or two spots could see twice October's average rainfall fall in just a few days. That would cause serious amounts of flooding combined with strong winds. That's why there's a red warning. Stay up to date with forecasts and warnings.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock, I'm Patrick Christie's, and this is GB News Tonight. And after 500 people were sadly killed in a hospital blast in Gaza, the leader of the free world, Joe Biden, arrived in Tel Aviv today to pledge his support for Israel.
Explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team.
Oh, grief. But is the doddery president capable of handling this crisis, or could he drive us to World War III? Nigel Farage is on the way with his blistering analysis. Meanwhile, the head of MI5 has warned that Hamas attacks could inspire similar atrocities in the UK, just 24 hours after 2 Swedish football fans were killed by an ISIS terrorist. In my monologue next, I'll warn about the rise of Islamist terror in Europe. Then I will get the views of my leading pundits tonight. I am joined by Christine Hamilton, I've got Adam Brooks, and I've got Matthew Laza as well. What a panel, top team. Plus, as Rishi Sunak is asked if he'll commit to creating a Ukraine-style scheme. Are Palestinian refugees Britain's responsibility? Henry Bolton and Dr. Shoaib Khan will debate that in a fiery clash. And after this trans fencer becomes a world champion, are we seeing yet another assault on women's sports? I mean, this time they've armed themselves. Deputy Tory Chairman Lee Anderson will, as ever, get straight to the point on this issue. He's live in the studio with me very, very shortly. And as always, you'll get a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. Oh, yeah, Prince Harry's biographer as well, Angela Levin. She's uncancelled later in the show. A blockbuster 2 hours coming right up, right after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening. Well, the top story from the GB newsroom tonight is that the US President Joe Biden has been speaking on a visit to Israel, where he's announced a new agreement to allow humanitarian aid to move from Egypt into Gaza in the south. He also confirmed $100 million worth of new US funding for that aid to get into Gaza and the West Bank. President Biden's visit to Israel was meant to be a visit to stop the escalation of the conflict in the region, but after last night's bombing of a hospital in Gaza, planned meetings with regional leaders have had to be cancelled. Well, later on in a speech, he stressed the importance of living by the rule of law.
You are a Jewish state, but you're also a democracy. And like the United States, you don't live by the rules of terrorists. You live by the rule of law. And when conflicts flare, you live by the law of wars. What sets us apart from the terrorists is we believe in the fundamental dignity of every human life. Israeli, Palestinian, Arab, Jew, Muslim, Christian, everyone. You can't give up what makes you who you are. If you give that up, then the terrorists win, and we can never let them win.
Well, the US president also supported the Israeli Defense Forces' claims that the explosion at the hospital in Gaza last night was caused by a failed rocket attack on Israel by another terror group operating within Gaza, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Officials in Gaza, though, are still blaming the Israelis for the explosion, which they say killed nearly 500 people. Rishi Sunak described the hospital explosion as shocking, but called for calm heads and said intelligence analysts would establish exactly what had happened. Now, hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters have gathered outside Downing Street tonight. Shouting justice. People are holding up placards calling for an end to the massacre of civilians. The crowd also lighting candles for the victims of last night's explosion at the hospital in Gaza. In consumer news, milk, cheese and egg prices fell last month, easing pressure at the supermarket tills, but fuel prices rose sharply. That comes as the UK's overall inflation remained at 6.7%, despite expectations it could fall again, according to the Office for National Statistics. Oil prices are higher because of the war in Ukraine, and now events in Israel and Palestine have sparked further oil increase prices. Now, a red weather warning for rain has been issued by the Met Office for parts of Scotland. That means very dangerous weather is on its way, with extensive flooding likely to pose a risk to life, the warning says. It runs from 6 p.m. tomorrow until noon on Friday. Storm Barbet, though, has already hit the Republic of Ireland this afternoon. We've seen flooding in County Cork, and we've seen it hit the English coastline along the Devon coast as well. You're with GB News on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is Britain's News Channel.
It is time that our political leaders are held to account for what they've done to Britain and Europe. For the last 20 years, a very small collection of third-rate narcissistic egomaniacs have managed to make decisions on immigration, both legal and illegal, that have irreversibly changed an entire continent for the worse. The threat of Islamist terrorism has gone through the roof. In the last few days alone, since it's kicked off between Hamas and Israel. We've seen a teacher stabbed to death in France by a bloke on a terror watch list. We've seen a jihadi gunman rampaging through Brussels on a moped, shooting people at will. Synagogues have been firebombed in Germany. 6 French airports have been closed due to bomb threats. People are pouring red paint over Jewish schools in Britain. And people are being told to remain vigilant when they go to gatherings, just like watching England play football at Wembley. This is just in the last few days. I mean, there is an ongoing terror investigation as well after a man was stabbed to death outside a migrant hotel in Hartlepool. That was a few days ago. That flew under the radar, didn't it? The people of Europe did not consent to scenes like this. Here is a Tunisian chap who is known to authorities having pledged allegiance to ISIS, dressed in bright orange, rampaging through the EU's capital city of Brussels, shooting Swedish football fans at will, because in Sweden, they've been burning copies of the Quran, apparently. The people of Europe did not consent to this either. A man also on a terror watch list shouting Allahu Akbar and stabbing a teacher to death. I am sick and tired of abnormality becoming normal, of extreme acts of religious-based violence being considered normal. We all do thoughts and prayers. We wear black armbands at the football. We light a few candles. We put the French flag as our profile picture. And our politicians have the nerve to come out and tell us that we will not let it defeat us. They're not the ones dying, are they? They're not the ones on the front line of the problem. That their decisions about mass uncontrolled immigration, very often illegal immigration, have created. We've got talk in the House of Commons today about, guys, deporting any foreign national with links to Hamas. Why the heck did you let them in the first place? Seriously. I mean, how many times do we have to go through the same thing over and over again? Where was this jihadi from? Oh, somewhere outside Europe. Were they known to authorities? Yes, they were. Did they have a history of violence? Oh, yeah, they did, yeah. Did they enter illegally? Possibly, quite hard to tell. Had we lost track of them? Yeah, we had, yeah. Have people now died as a result? Yes, they have. I mean, good grief. This is before we've even started talking about the wholesale cultural and societal change. I'm just talking about the dangerous stuff here. Now, it's important to stress that the majority of people who come to live in Europe obviously aren't bad, evil people. But uncontrolled migration means that a few incredibly dangerous individuals are able to slip through undetected. A group of blithering idiots, often unelected, have over the course of the last couple of decades made decisions that have made all of our lives less safe, and they are not held to account for this. And the solution? More of it. More of it. Just look at Hamza Yusuf here.
In the past, people in Scotland and across the UK have opened our hearts and our homes. We've welcomed those from Syria, from Ukraine and many other countries. Conference, we must do so again. I'm calling today on the international community to commit to a worldwide refugee programme for the people of Gaza.
Oh, grief, OK. Look, we all know that not everybody in Gaza supports Hamas or is a terrorist, and I want to make that very clear. But he must be having a flipping laugh if he thinks that willingly importing people from one of the most militant Islamist hotspots in the world is a good idea at this point in time. I mean, even Arab nations don't want to do it. Here's Jordan's King Abdullah.
No refugees in Jordan, no refugees in Egypt. This is a situation of humanitarian dimension that has to be dealt inside of Gaza and the West Bank, and not to try and push the Palestinian challenge and their future onto other people's shoulders.
Yeah, Scotland as well, I think, apparently needs to deal with that challenge. I am absolutely seething about politicians making catastrophic judgment calls and playing roulette with our lives. We are now, as ordinary people in Europe, reaping what these cretins have sown. So few people with so few brain cells have managed to cause so much harm in Europe. Those are my thoughts, of course. I want to hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. We've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larzer. I'm going to start with you then, Christine. Look, I obviously have huge concerns that we have essentially a Trojan horse here that could erupt at any moment.
We absolutely have. And with all this uncontrolled immigration, people coming over in the boats, We have no idea who these people are. We have absolutely no idea. And what do we do when we discover somebody who's been peddling these boats and organising? We give him 11 years in jail. We don't even clamp down when we catch one of these people who's been responsible for
Just to clarify, so you're talking about an individual, this guy was from Iran, claimed asylum, was found living in Ilford, was responsible for a fifth of the entire boat crossing last year, and he got sentenced to 11 years in a Belgian prison.
I know.
I mean, it's just bonkers.
That is our response. I mean, this all started with Tony Blair, didn't it? Because he wanted
most things.
to let, most bad things. He wanted to have uncontrolled. Your turn in a minute, Matthew. He wanted uncontrolled immigration because he thought that they would vote Labour.
Okay.
And we have now, I mean, the statistics are horrendous. We're the architects of our own demise. Between 2011 and 2021, the total population of the whole country went up by 3.5 million.
Right.
33% of that total, 1.2 million, were Muslims.
OK.
Now, that speaks for itself.
It's societal change.
It is not hard to see the direction of travel. I'm not saying all Muslims are terrorists. Of course I'm not.
No, of course.
But it is not hard to see the direction of travel.
No, of course.
And we have no idea who is in our country.
And that in itself is a problem. And again, we're just going to emphasise what we've already said, which is we're talking about the problem being, certain radical elements, right? Which would be a problem in any society, in any walk of life. I'll come to you in a second, Adam, but Matthew, I can see you were furiously shaking your head there.
I mean, Christine, I don't think Tony Blair immigration policy was driven by people who may or may not vote Labour.
Mandelson admitted that.
I think it was.
Mandelson,
well, Mandelson
admitted that on camera. I've seen it.
Nobody. Well, we'd have to show me the clip, Adam, because he's never admitted that in conversations I've had with him. But the issue, and of course, people from Europe couldn't vote in general elections; they could only vote in local elections. So all the EU immigration, which people.
Can I just ask you a quick question directly? Do you think that some of the people like, say, Angela Merkel or other European leaders who made decisions that have now made us all in Europe less safe should be held to account for that?
Yeah, I think people should be held to account for the policies that they adopted, and different European countries took very different stances. I've just come back from Scandinavia, where the Danes and the Swedes take diametrically opposed policies, even when they had governments both led by the Social Democrats. The Swedes were much more open. The Danes are very, very firm, for much firmer immigration policy than we have here. So yes, politicians should always be able to account. I think we can all agree, though, that Hamza Yousaf's clip is absolutely extraordinary, distracting from his terrible record in Scotland, not least because he doesn't control who comes to Scotland. It's a UK-wide issue, so just ludicrous.
Go on, Adam, come in.
There's one thing. On the UK terror watch list, there's 45,000 currently being monitored, 40,000 of which are suspected terrorist sympathisers or potential suspects. So we have a real problem here already. It's too late, I'm afraid. And to have tens of thousands of people come over on dinghies who we don't know who they are. They're
largely from Muslim countries.
I'm not actually. It doesn't matter what colour, what race, what religion they are. If anyone comes here, I want them to behave, and I don't want them to be.
And you want to know who's coming into the country, which you don't have in small boats.
I don't want them to be a threat. But we have no idea of their background, their criminality.
None at all.
We've had rapists, paedophiles, gangsters, terrorists already. Unfortunately, it's too late. We've got 40,000 being watched.
Yeah, and again, I just want to emphasise, for me, it's not the idea that the countries that they come from are majority Muslim. It's the idea of radical elements infiltrating it, and like we're seeing, for example, in Brussels recently. And that's my issue, which is that when we're being told now, Christine, when you go to this football match at Wembley, be vigilant. What are we being vigilant of? Well, we're being asked to be vigilant for radical Islamist terrorism, aren't we? And that I can't help but feel is a problem that we've largely imported.
Well, indeed, but who has committed all the terrorist acts in this country?
Well, not all. There have been
right-wing terrorists.
There have been far. But I get your point.
Majority.
Yes, I get your point. Yeah.
But not things like the death of Joe Cox and things.
No, exactly that. That would be my concern, which is that I think, you look around at Europe now, Adam, and I wonder whether or not we've brought some of these issues on ourselves that are brought to a head when you see a massive problem taking place in the Middle East, which is going to get worse.
It's too late. And that's what I've got to reiterate. It is too late. It only takes a few dozen of the 40,000 that are being watched on that list to decide to take up in arms or decide to do anything, and we're going to have mass casualties in this country.
Are you fearful, Matthew, or do you think that, hey, we're being a bit over the top? Maybe it's easy to... We've seen some reaction, you know, in France recently. There was a stabbing. Obviously, we've had some bomb threats at an airport. We've had, you know, quite a few issues on the continent of Brussels saying, yeah, maybe this is just a short burst. Maybe we're being a bit OTT.
I think it's a very challenging time for European societies. I think there is depending where events in the Middle East go, there could be a conflict. But I think it's incumbent upon everybody to stay calm and what happens. But yes, of course, you know, we do want the authorities to be keeping an eye on as many people as possible who they've got some concerns about.
I would feel safer if our terror threat was raised, because if that then meant that there was more of a visible presence. I do have faith in our security services, and I trust them, and they do a remarkable job, and they stop a lot of things that we never hear about, thankfully, and that's really important. But I look around at the world at the moment, and I find it amazing that we're not necessarily at the absolute most severe threat that we could possibly be. But we're out of time. Once I'll come back to you. There are loads of tonight. So look, of course, after 500 people are killed in a hospital blast in Gaza, the leader of the free world, Joe Biden, arrived in Tel Aviv today to pledge his support for Israel. But this doddery president, is he capable of handling this crisis, or could he drive us towards World War III? Nigel Farage is on the way with his blistering analysis. But up next in The Clash, Rishi Sunak is asked if he will commit to creating a Ukraine-style scheme where we get a load of Palestinian refugees, essentially. I'm asking, is that our responsibility? OK, so former UKIP leader Henry Bolton goes toe-to-toe with human rights lawyer Dr Shoaib Khan. That'll be a fiery debate, and that is happening next.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson are on the way, but now it's time for the clash. Well, as the war between Israel and Hamas continues to escalate and Arab countries like Egypt and Jordan remarkably rule out accepting refugees from that war zone, the Prime Minister has come under pressure to allow fleeing Gazans to enter the UK. So yesterday, Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf called for a Ukraine-style refugee scheme. And the SNP's House of Commons leader, Stephen Flynn, doubled down on that demand earlier today at PMQs. Let's have a watch.
I ask the Prime Minister what early consideration, if any, his government has given to the creation of a refugee resettlement scheme.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud that we are already one of the most significant contributors to the United Nations efforts to support Palestinian refugees, and our funding supports around 5.8 million refugees annually.
Yeah, remarkable, isn't it? So tonight I am asking, are Palestinian refugees Britain's responsibility? Let me know your thoughts. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com, or tweet me at gbnews. And while you're there, make sure you go to our poll, and I'll bring you the results very, very shortly. So to debate this, I'm joined by human rights lawyer Dr. Shoaib Khan and border control expert Henry Bolton. Chaps, thank you very much. Welcome to the fray. Henry, I will start with you. Are Palestinian refugees our responsibility?
No. What is our responsibility, I would say, is to try to stop this conflict getting any worse, stop it spreading, and then to try and de-escalate the situation. And, of course, put pressure on all parties. And, of course, we've got very little ability to apply pressure on Hamas, but on all parties to try and avoid civilian casualties. But when we talk about refugees, Patrick, first of all, the Palestinians want to stay in that region. Point number one. Point number two, and we can talk about any of these in more detail. Both Jordan and Egypt are closing their borders to Palestinian refugees from Gaza, or potentially from the West Bank, although I don't particularly see that as being a problem, not in the immediate future. And why are they doing that? Well, let's talk about the Egyptians. The Egyptians are closing their borders to Palestinian refugees from Gaza because they fought a long-running war with extremists in the Sinai Peninsula. They believe that amongst those people who would leave Gaza are extremists, are hardline Hamas fanatics, who would then cause problems both within Egypt and launching or continuing the conflict against Israel, but launching it from Egypt, thereby undermining, weakening, maybe destroying the peace agreement that has existed between those two countries for 40 years. What I would say is we don't want to bring those people here or take them out of the region. Our diplomatic and aid effort should be working on keeping them within the region so that they can return as soon as possible.
I'll come back to you. Dr. Shoaib Khan, same question to you. Are Palestinian refugees our responsibility?
Well, yeah, they're everyone's responsibility. But just to answer some of the points just made, I mean, firstly, in terms of, we should be doing more to, in terms of a ceasefire, just bringing peace to the region. Just a few hours ago, the UN was trying to pass a resolution. The US vetoed it, and the UK abstained. And that was exactly what it was calling for, a ceasefire and humanitarian protection. So, of course, I mean, I think that's just rhetoric, isn't it? We're not doing anything about that. As usual, we're giving them millions, billions of taxpayers' money, but that's it. We're not really interested in peace there. We're not doing anything. But secondly, in terms of the refugees, of course, I mean, they're everyone's responsibility. I don't see why they're not. The point is, if, for instance, someone suddenly invaded France, is it just Britain's responsibility because we share a border or we have the channel?
No, but do you not think, Dr. Shoaib, I get you. I'll stay with you. Dr. Shoaib, I'll stay with you. But to be fair, if somebody invaded France and us and Spain and Germany said we're not taking any French people, then some people in the Middle East might start asking questions about that, Dr. Shoaib.
Well, they might, but they would be wrong. The whole point is they're humans. And, you don't, just because your neighbor isn't helping another neighbor, you don't shut your doors as well. I think
but
that's
why
it.
aren't they
Our
helping
own- what is our moral obligation? What do we think is the right thing? Are we seriously taking, lessons from Egypt? Is that how we run our foreign policy now? Is Egypt doing the right thing or not? I just don't really understand that. And second, in terms of Egypt closing borders, I think that's despicable. Of course, these people literally running for their lives, and slam the door shut on their face. Of course, that's wrong. But the point is, yes, I understand, because there's no scheme there. That's just literally a borders open, people just rushing through, and that's the whole point. Instead of
I find that. Can I just say I find that remarkable from a chap who I regularly speak to about channel migration, right? To say that they shouldn't be accepting them because there's no proper scheme there and they're just running through the borders. I do find that quite an interesting turn of events, Dr. Shoaib. Look, Henry, I'm going to go back to you. What do you make of what Shoaib's just said there?
Well, first of all, about the ceasefire. Yeah, I'm not supporting a ceasefire. Absolutely not. No way, no how. Hamas is a terrorist organisation that committed the most barbaric, the most depraved, the most disgusting terrorist attack ever perpetrated against Israel. Israel should absolutely go and hunt down these animals who are responsible. No ifs, no buts. And I tell you this, Patrick, there is no peace in the Middle East with Hamas. Peace can only occur if Hamas is eradicated. And you'll find the Egyptians would agree with that. They spent years trying to do the same thing and managed to get them out of Egypt. Now, that's the problem here, is that this isn't about us feeling good about ourselves. Firstly, there are not swarms of Palestinian refugees trying to escape from anywhere but Gaza, the immediate region. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees and the ICRC will say that the best outcome from a situation like this is that refugees stay within the region and then are facilitated to move back as soon as possible, as most actually want to do. Now, I reiterate, if we just fall over ourselves trying to feel good about opening up these corridors, we are going to make enemies of Egypt and Jordan who want them to stay in the area anyway because they don't want the Palestinians to be moved away. And I tell you now, we would be opening the doors to a massive, massive national security risk.
Let's park that
Egypt
there.
and Jordan both recognise.
There, because I'll bring Shoaib in on exactly that point. Look, Shoaib, I think for a lot of people that's the actual concern, isn't it? That it would be a huge national security risk.
And that's why we need to have a scheme, because we don't have any schemes. Everyone's closing their doors. Give it a few weeks, a few months, we're going to have boatloads of people, Palestinians, crossing the channel. And because somehow, and it's all going to be young men, it's all going to be fighting age men, as the media likes to call them, because they disabled, the babies, the women, they're not going to be making those journeys. Of course that's going to happen. And then we'll have to accept them, whoever they are, because of course, international law won't allow us to send them back to Gaza in the situation we're in. So of course we'll have to then let them stay. Why not open up a scheme, send flights there, like we did with Afghanistan, like we did with Ukraine? We can decide who we want to bring. Bring the women, bring the babies, bring the children, bring the people on life support in hospitals. And that's the point of these schemes.
But then we've got to get them back. And Egypt and Jordan and the whole of the Middle East would oppose you on that, because the whole of the Middle East wants the Palestinians to stay there because they want to safeguard the concept of a Palestinian homeland, which I support. A two-state solution. And that's not going to happen if all the Palestinians leave.
Shoaib, go on.
Can we just decide who we want? I mean, I don't think it makes it. Are we really letting Jordan and Egypt dictate our foreign policy and our humanitarian policy? Is that really the main reason? Or Egypt might turn against us?
Maybe they know the situation a great deal better than we do, because they are together hosts of with Lebanon, 6 million Palestinians. They are neighbouring countries, they know the problems, and we should not be trying to second-guess them on the basis of our liberal, open-door policy that actually puts this nation at risk.
Exactly.
We've already seen Berlin tonight. Berlin tonight is an example.
With that. What Egypt and Lebanon are not part of the equation. The point is, we know the situation in Gaza. Should we have those people? Should we save the lives of those children? That's exactly what I'm saying. It doesn't matter what Egypt wants.
Not that way. Not that way.
Okay, but I'll tell you what,
we just wait until the men come over on boats.
I'm quite inclined to keep this going, actually. Henry, go on. So would you only take women in? Well, what about just women and children, Henry?
I wouldn't take anybody in from Gaza. And the reason I wouldn't is because what we've got to do is work with the Israelis to prevent civilian casualties. We've got to get, as now Biden has made an agreement with Israel, that now food and water will be allowed in, even though fuel won't. because it'll go straight into the Hamas war effort. But they are doing what they can to safeguard civilians. What we've got to do is keep them in the area. We've got to make sure that this conflict doesn't spread, that the civilian casualties don't get any worse. And we've got to then find a long-term solution to this. We will undermine any long-term solution if we bring these people out of the region.
OK, chaps, we are going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. But thank you. That was a proper clash. I love it. Love to see it. Thank you very, very much. It's Dr. Shoaib Khan there, human rights lawyer and border control expert Henry Bolton. I mean, completely polar opposite views. Great stuff. So, who do you agree with? As Rishi Sunak is asked if he will commit to creating a Ukraine-style scheme, are Palestinian refugees Britain's responsibility? Let's go to Twitter first. Will's been on. Thank you, Will. He says, no, they are the responsibility of the Arab countries. Mega-rich countries like Saudi Arabia should be working out evacuation plans and taking refugees. Well, it always amazes me, I kind of say that tongue-in-cheek, how little some of these Arab countries do to protect their own people. Andrew on Twitter says, Sunak needs to work on stopping the small boats before we even think about taking any refugees from Gaza. And Johnny on Twitter says, yes, it is our responsibility. We have loads of room and resources to help our fellow man. Johnny, hey, look, it's a view, and maybe you live in a different part of the country to me. Maybe you live in a different part of the country to a lot of people. Maybe you do have room, OK? I know a lot of people don't. I know a lot of people don't, but I respect your view, Johnny. Now, your verdict is in. 6% of you agree that Palestinian refugees are Britain's responsibility. Can I just say, even one of our polls, that is a stonking victory. 94% of you say they are not our responsibility. So there we are. The verdict is in. And I no doubt people will be hoping that people are listening to us here. Rishi Sunak is listening to a lot of the GB News viewers. But coming up, after a trans fencer becomes a world champion, are we seeing yet another jab, see what we did there, at women's sport? Deputy Tory Chairman Lee Anderson will deliver his cutting analysis of that and more of the day's biggest stories. That's live. He's in the studio with me very, very shortly. And, of course, after 500 people are killed in a hospital blast in Gaza, the leader of the free world, Joe Biden, Doddery Sleepy Joe, arrived in Tel Aviv today to pledge his support for Israel. But is that walking zombie capable of handling this crisis? Or could he drive us towards World War III? Nigel Farage has got his blistering analysis, and that is coming your way in just a sec.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio. Red Wall Rottweiler Lee Anderson coming up very shortly, but first it's time for GB News' very own Nigel Farage. And as fears mount that the conflict between Israel and Hamas could descend into World War III, the leader of the free world, Joe Biden, jetted into Israel today on a high-stakes trip. His visit comes just hours after a hospital in Gaza was bombed, killing, reportedly, 500 people, with a row erupting as to who was actually responsible for that blast. Well, the president weighed in, didn't it? He weighed in on that dispute today, but in typical Biden style, his choice of words raised eyebrows. Have a watch and a listen to this.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you.
Oh, sorry, I was just doing my Joe Biden impression. So, Nigel joins me now. Is the doddery president capable of handling this crisis, do you think? Or could it drive us towards World War III?
Just shows you what a great name Donald Trump picked for him when he said Sleepy Joe, doesn't it? Look, to use the phrase, the other team, I mean, what is this, a game of football? Is there some moral equivalence between Hamas and the elected government of Israel? Because that's what it sounded like. It was an extraordinary, inappropriate use of that word. Though it was interesting, wasn't it, that it showed you that American intelligence had sussed out that actually the 10 rockets that were fired at 6:59 p.m. from a cemetery close to the hospital, that it was one of those rockets that crashed into the side of the hospital, into that car park. He was doddery. At another point in that press conference, he lost his way completely and just pretended, oh, there isn't time to finish the story. You know what? I don't believe for 1 minute that Putin would have invaded Ukraine if we had a strong president of the USA. I don't believe Hamas would have done what they've done if we had a strong president in the USA. And I think that Biden has made the world, ever since that fateful withdrawal from Afghanistan, leaving behind $85 billion worth of good American military equipment. I think ever since that moment, the world has become a much more dangerous place. Now, I'm not for one moment going to talk about it spiraling into World War III. I think that's irresponsible. But is there a danger that Israel could face a war now on 2 fronts? Yes, I think that's very real. And if you get to the bottom of this, Biden has spent much of the last 15 years encouraging deals with Iran. The Iran nuclear deal. You know, we free up tens of billions of dollars in exchange for which Iran do not continue with their nuclear program. Well, they have continued with the program, and they've used the money to fund Hamas and Hezbollah. And he is very, very responsible for much of what has gone on.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. While we're all looking at how Joe Biden's going to be able to handle this going forward, what's the potential for escalation? Maybe the bigger question should be, has Joe Biden helped cause this?
No, I believe he has. And that's why his words of support for Israel, for me, frankly, ring a little bit hollow. The world is a far less safe place with Joe Biden. And, of course, the next big one is going to be when China invades Taiwan, which, on current projections, will be next year.
Yeah, well, you know, this is kind of why I'm saying, is he in partly, anyway, potentially responsible for at least the possibility of World War III, but we don't need to exaggerate, partly because the world doesn't need any more ramping up than it's already got. I'm just going to turn now, Nigel, to this incident that you mentioned there, this hospital in Gaza yesterday. Once again, the BBC has found itself in hot water over its reporting of the conflict. They jumped the gun, for want of a better phrase, and immediately blamed Israel for the explosion, despite both Hamas and the Israelis denying responsibility. Let's just have a little look and a listen.
You know, it is hard to see what else this could be, really, given the size of the explosion, other than an Israeli airstrike or several airstrikes.
You know, Nigel, I was watching Al Jazeera, believe it or not, live when this happened, right? And they had a camera in the foyer of the hospital, and I'm not joking now, they were dragging bodies in front of the camera. This is all on live television, no censoring, nothing, checking for pulses, shouting about Israel, all of this stuff. You know, you might expect that from Al Jazeera, but you wouldn't expect this kind of thing from the BBC, or would you?
The BBC have got themselves really into a terrible mess over all of this since the 7th of October. Their true prejudices have come out. And amazingly, you know, John Simpson, regarded as one of the great BBC veterans, you know, even he puts out messages saying it's not for the BBC to take sides, which, of course, is why they won't say that Hamas are a terrorist organisation, even though they're prescribed by the British government. And I think this has done the BBC simply the most enormous damage, though, fair to say, Sky News are equally in the same boat. Our national broadcaster, and actually those three letters BBC around the world, have represented something quite great about our country over the last century, but they are now in very, very serious decline and looking deeply partisan.
I've got a statement for the BBC. I'll read that in a second, but before I do that, Nigel, you know, some of the latest opinion polling I found quite startling, actually, which is that there are, certainly when you break it down by age, there are a lot of people who say they don't know what side they're on in Britain when it comes to Israel and Hamas, really. Israel and that terror group, Hamas. Are you concerned about what that actually means for Britain at the moment?
I'm not that concerned that a large number of people don't know, because the history of this region is deeply complicated. And, you know, we hear about the Golan Heights and we hear about the West Bank, and it's why the first Monday I was on after the 7th of October attacks, I put a big map up on the wall to try and point to people where these places were. If you don't know, if you don't understand it, it's better not to say. What I think is more alarming are the number of people who genuinely believe that Israel is occupying Gaza. They withdrew from their donkeys years ago, and yet through the education system, through the university system, through the all-pervasive left, who, of course, loathe Israel with a passion, we have a lot of young people who have been seriously misguided. So support for the sovereign state of Israel is probably weaker now in the UK than it's been at any point since 1948.
I think it's interesting. We started, didn't we, about talking about Joe Biden's use of kind of football language. It came from the other team. Depressingly, I think that the younger generation view Israel and Gaza, Israel, Palestine, Israel, Hamas, really, as some kind of football match. And they take sides. They pick a team, regardless of the facts, which actually do matter when it comes to all of this. Nigel, thank you very much for your time. As ever, always an absolute pleasure. Great stuff. I am going to go to that BBC statement now because the spokesperson said this: "We reject these claims about our coverage. Anyone watching, listening to, or reading it can see that we have set out both sides' competing claims about the attack." This is about the hospital attack, by the way. "Clearly showing who is saying them and what we do or don't know." One of the main problems when it comes to the BBC's coverage is that when you read things like Palestine's health ministry, and they are quoted, that's Hamas, right? So Hamas is in charge of Gaza. So when they quote things like, "Oh, the health ministry has said this," I mean, that is, some would argue, terrorist propaganda. So when the BBC write a headline that says, you know, "An Israeli missile strike has killed 500 at a hospital in Gaza," comma, says Palestine's health ministry. You do have to take that with a pinch of salt, don't you? But coming up, after pro-Palestinian activists desecrated the cenotaph at a rally on Saturday, are 60 Tory MPs right to urge Sadiq Khan to ban protests at the site? That's right, MPs have now found their bottle and they're saying that we should ban protests by our war memorial. My panel of top pundits will debate that very shortly, but right next, after a trans fencer becomes a world champion, are we seeing yet another jab at women's sport? Deputy Tory Chairman Lee Anderson will deliver his sharp analysis live in the studio in just a few moments' time.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, very shortly, I was speaking to the man who bred the first ever XL bully dogs, the first ever dog, these controversial beasts, some of them call them, lovable rogues, they say. But first, it's time for our Red Wall Rottweiler. It's Lee Anderson, and the veteran fencing World Championships has any en garde after a trans competitor won the title against another biological woman, other biological women. America's Liz Kokab was allowed to compete and ultimately triumph in the female division after the US fencing changed their policy last year. But the swimmer and activist Riley Gaines has denounced the victory, saying that winning a title as a male in the women's category doesn't make you a champion, it makes you an entitled cheat. This comes after British Jiu-Jitsu were also slammed for allowing trans women into the female category. I must say, I find that particularly egregious. But no, seriously, because then you just end up with men beating women up. Right, so Lee Anderson joins me now. Lee, you'll never sit on the fence, will you? Is this person a cheat?
Yes, for anybody listening on radio tonight, Patrick, that photo we've just seen, that is a man. It's basically a man. Look, you know, in the 70s, when I was growing up, we used to have these problems with the Olympic Games and World Championships where, on some occasions, we didn't know whether the Russian shot putters, the East German shot putters were a man or a woman. And they used to have a sex test, a basic sex test, which was, have a look down below. But these days, it doesn't matter. A bloke can turn up, put a frock on, bit of lip in and a wig, and turn up in a women's championships and compete with women. It's not fair. It's cheating. And like I said in my tweet, I think it was this morning or yesterday, you know, in 20, 30 years' time, we could end up with an Olympic Games or World Championships with no biological women there.
Yeah.
It'll all be men competing against women. It's absolutely not. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah.
It's time for these sporting bodies to sort this out.
Yeah, I mean, that is what we're going to end up with, because ultimately it's going to come down to peak physical performance.
Yeah.
And in an athletics tournament, men are more athletic than women.
Well, if the Olympic Games tomorrow was all about strength and ability and pace and strength, and there was no women's events and no men's events, there would be no women there.
No, there wouldn't.
At all.
No. I think when it comes to, like, fencing, I get it's an extreme sport in the sense that it involves a sword, but they are all geared up, etc. Things like jiu-jitsu or MMA or boxing.
Yeah.
But that is a man beating a woman up on national television.
Yeah.
And I find that absolutely disgusting.
And the thing is, Patrick, you know, imagine having a daughter, a young girl's training for a particular sport, maybe swimming or something like that, from the age of 4 or 5 year old, puts the hours in, puts the shifts in for 10, 12 years, and then, hey, presto, 12 years later, some bloke turns up in the dressing room, jumps in pool with them and beats them off at pool.
Full tackle as well.
Yeah, full tackle.
You know, I find that absolutely astonishing that you could be in that situation. I mean, even the showers alone pose a danger before you even start competing.
Well, this is the argument I have with people. You know, when they call me transphobic, or I say, no, it's not transphobic. You do not want a bloke turning up in a swimming changing room next to a young girl getting all his bits out.
No, because that's basic common sense, but we can't.
You know, back in my day, they'd have been locked up for that.
Well, yeah. Well,
you know.
it's not beyond the realms of possibility that some of them should today, actually.
No.
But a spokesperson, a spokesman, or is it, for USA Fencing said, USA Fencing proudly stands with Liz Kokab and celebrates her continued success at the highest levels of fencing. We are committed to fostering an inclusive environment that respects all athletes, regardless of gender identity. And, of course, this, indeed, is just some trans people. Not every single trans person wants to compete in these kind of things, or, indeed, poses a danger to anybody. In fact, the vast majority of them are completely fine. But in football, Lee, England midfielder and Saudi sellout Jordan Henderson was booed again last night by supporters when he took to the field against Italy. Ex-Liverpool star has been outspoken on LGBT rights, but faced criticism for joining a league in Saudi Arabia where homosexuality can be punishable by death.
Yeah.
Here he is, his interview before the match.
Having someone like myself with the values that I have in Saudi Arabia is only a good thing.
Oh, he's doubled down, hasn't he? Is he Anderson a hypocrite?
Well, he needs to shut up, basically. I mean, I think he's been a great footballer, but he's actually making himself look a little bit of a fool. You know, it's all well and good putting your rainbow laces in and virtue signalling and saying this and that, but when the big bucks come knocking on your door, Patrick, his principles seem to go out the window. He's over there earning a fortune, and I don't fault him for that, but do not be an hypocrite. Do not be in the same mould as your Gary Nevilles and your Gary Linekers, because people have lost a lot of respect for Jordan over this.
I thought as well it was interesting when we were in Qatar. You know, that took the absolute biscuit.
Yeah.
Playing in stadiums built by slaves where women can essentially be, you know, battered to death for a variety of different crimes, which aren't really crimes. And you've got them sitting there. And now it turns out that apparently Hamas, the leaders of Hamas, are based in Qatar. So not only was that country as bad as we already thought it was, you've now got leaders of this terror organisation. It turns out I've just been living in Qatar. We're probably in the stadium watching the World Cup games. It's remarkable.
Well,
isn't it?
it is. I mean, some of these ex-footballers, they are actually an embarrassment. They are just a bunch of overpaid hypocrites. They'll say one thing, do another. Like I say, when the big bucks come knocking on the door, the principles go straight out the window, Patrick.
Look, finally, Lee, I've got to get your views on this. It's some people call it a Ramona rag, not me, of course. The New European has put together a spiteful SHIT list of people Britain could supposedly do without. Unsurprisingly, they're all right-wing. And, Lee, you're number 4. There you go. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm disappointed that I'm just number 4, actually. I mean, but the good news is these lists are not uncommon. I've been on a few of these lists, and I've beat Prince Andrew and people like that. So, look, next year, I mean, Suella's won.
Suella's number 1, and what you saw there was GBNews. Were we number 2? I think we were
so
number 2.
I've won it twice.
So you're on it twice.
Yeah.
You are.
And I'm in good company. Jacob Rees-Mogg's on there as well. I think.
Actually, really, I mean. Yeah. Not that's not fair on you, Lee, you know, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's really unfair on Jacob.
But it's a great list, and my parents are incredibly proud. They buzz in. If you're looking, Mum, Dad, wherever you are, I'm here.
Yeah.
They're proud.
Well, yeah, I mean, you owe it all to them, really, in a way.
It's a team game. It's a team game, Patrick. I'm so proud.
But what do you think about? I mean, can you imagine if we published something like? I mean, the outrage, the absolute outrage.
I think Ofcom would be knocking on the door, wouldn't they? They were saying it's absolutely outrageous, it's ridiculous. But you know, these people have got nothing else better to do. Actually, those people on that list, I mean, I'd love to go out with them, all of them. There's some great people on there. I mean, there's a few clowns on there, but most of them.
There are a few clowns. Yeah, there are. Well, there are a few. I mean, it's quite a long list. But I mean, yeah, the majority of them, I suspect, you'd have quite a good night out with.
Yeah, I'm in good company. Invite them around for a dinner party.
But you know what? Maybe we should do. I don't know about you, but I can sense a show. Christmas special, anyone?
Mind you, Russell Brand's on there, and I won't bother with him.
No, I mean there are a few out and out wrong-uns, right?
Yeah.
But some of them seem all right.
Take the BBC ones out. We're fine.
Yeah. Allegedly for Russell Brand, of course. We have to say allegedly for Russell Brand. Lee, thank you very much. That's Lee Anderson, the Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party. Now, coming up, after a spate of fatal attacks involving American XL bully dogs, is it right that Rishi Sunak bans the breed by 2025, as he set out to do so? I will be speaking, genuinely, to the man who actually created this breed, Dave Wilson. He joins me live from America to defend these dogs and possibly his own actions as well a little bit later tonight. But next, after pro-Palestinian activists desecrated the cenotaph at a rally on Saturday, are 60 Conservative MPs right to urge Sadiq Khan to ban protests at the memorial? My panel of top pundits will be getting stuck right into that very, very shortly. Don't you dare move.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Storm Babette arrives over the next 24 hours, bringing with it exceptional rainfall for eastern Scotland in particular. Red warning has been issued. Here's Babette for the rest of Wednesday, moving into central parts of the UK. It's been a wet day for southern areas, but that rain's now moving into North Wales, the Midlands, Northern England and Northern Ireland overnight, especially heavy across Northern Ireland with the risk of 30 to 50 or even 60 millimetres by the end of the night, and so that could cause some disruption by dawn. Otherwise, it's drying up a little towards the south. It stays blustery, it stays cloudy, and as a result, it's going to be a mild start Thursday, but it is going to be an unpleasant start for many. Wet and windy weather, strong gusts of wind associated with Storm Babette, but then increasingly wet and windy for central and northern Scotland in particular, with in places 70 or even 80 mile/hour wind gusts, and that wind driving heavy and persistent rain into eastern Scotland in particular. Angus and Aberdeenshire seeing that rainfall really build up over the next 48 hours. Up until the weekend, with, in places, 200 to 250 millimetres of rainfall. In one or two spots could see twice October's average rainfall fall in just a few days. That would cause serious amounts of flooding, combined with strong winds. That's why there's a red warning. Stay up to date with forecasts and warnings.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
This time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio. It's 10 p.m, I'm Patrick Christie's, and this is GB News Tonight. Now, 60 Conservative MPs demand action over this disgusting desecration of the cenotaph, with Sadiq Khan being urged to protect the sacred memorial for Britain's fallen soldiers after it was disgracefully taken over by rabid pro-Palestinian protesters. Should the London mayor heed their calls to ban protests at the cenotaph? That's the big debate, and that's with my leading panel of pundits next. And tonight I am joined by Christine Hamilton, we've got Adam Brooks, and we've got Matthew Larzer as well. What's not to love? Plus, get this, with XL bully dogs due to be banned in the UK after a string of fatal attacks, I'm joined live from the United States by a bloke called Dave Wilson, who actually bred the first XL bully back in the 1990s. This is his fault. No, not quite, but to ask if he holds himself responsible in any way for the panic brought to British streets by dangerous dogs, and frankly, just get his take on what he's created. But also coming up, with shoplifting costing British shops almost £1 billion last year, are toothless police still seem incapable of tackling the crime wave? So, is Britain's first private police force, which has successfully prosecuted almost 300 thieves already, the answer to this scourge of shoplifting? We will debate that in our media buzz, and later in the show, we welcome back esteemed royal biographer. It's the wonderful Angela Levin, offering her unfiltered analysis of Harry and Meghan's latest climate hypocrisy and tackling rumours that one of the pair has started house hunting back in the UK. There'll also be a new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass crown before the night is out, and the first of tomorrow's newspapers are, well, the hot off the press. I've got some of them right here in front of me right now. They're on the way, but that's right after the news with Polly Millers.
Patrick, thank you. Well, the top story this evening is that the US president says Egypt will open the Rafah border crossing. That'll mean they'll allow 20 trucks carrying humanitarian aid into Gaza. Earlier, Joe Biden announced $100 million of new US funding for that aid to get into Gaza and the West Bank. President Biden's visit to Israel was meant to prevent an escalation of the conflict in the region, but after last night's bombing of the hospital in Gaza, planned meetings to stop that spreading with regional leaders have had to be cancelled. He's now on his way back to the United States.
You are a Jewish state, but you're also a democracy. And like the United States, you don't live by the rules of terrorists. You live by the rule of law. When conflicts flare, you live by the law of wars. What sets us apart from the terrorists is we believe in the fundamental dignity of every human life. Israeli, Palestinian, Arab, Jew, Muslim, Christian, everyone. You can't give up what makes you who you are. If you give that up, then the terrorists win, and we can never let them win.
Whilst in Israel, the president supported the Israeli Defense Forces' claims today that the explosion at the hospital in Gaza last night was caused by a failed rocket attack on Israel by another terror group operating inside Gaza, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Officials in Gaza, however, are still blaming the Israelis for the explosion, which they say killed 500 people. Rishi Sunak today described the hospital explosion as shocking, but he called for calm heads and said intelligence analysts would establish exactly what happened. Now, hundreds of pro-Palestine protesters have been gathering outside Downing Street tonight. People have been holding up placards calling for an end to the massacre of civilians. The crowd also lit candles for the victims of last night's explosion at the hospital. In other news today, milk, cheese and egg prices fell last month, easing pressure at the supermarket tills, but fuel prices rose sharply. That comes as the UK's overall inflation remained at 6.7%, despite expectations it would fall again, according to the Office for National Statistics. Oil prices are higher because of the war in Ukraine, and now events in Israel and Palestine have sparked further increases. And finally, a red weather warning for rain has been issued by the Met Office for parts of Scotland. That means very dangerous weather is on its way. Extensive flooding is likely to pose a risk to life as well. The weather warning running from tomorrow until noon on Friday. But Storm Barbet is barrelling in. It has already hit the Republic of Ireland today. We've seen flooding in County Cork, and it has also come to the English coastline by Devon. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Well, it's tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. And let's kick off with the very first look. Yes, let's kick off with the very first look at our front pages, hot off the press. We're going in with the Metro. Yeah, massive story on the front of the Metro. There's 11 years for £50 million UK dinghy kingpin. I'm laughing, so I'm not crying, to be honest with you. This guy who came over from Iran, claimed asylum himself, turned out to be living in Ilford, in East London. They caught him for being part of bringing 10,000 people across the Channel, which was a fifth of the entire number of people who came across the Channel in that year. He was arrested and given 11 years, just 11 years. He secretly ran a £50 million smuggling network. Let's be honest, most of that money, I would imagine, is shoved away in bank accounts that we've got nothing to do with. So this guy, well, let me put it this way, all right? Would you or would you not do 7 years in prison for, like, 20 million quid? I mean, I would, I'll be honest with you. We're also going to be talking about The Independent. Yes, here we go. Biden blames the other team for hospital horror. Copped it a lot with this, Biden. US president backs Israel's assertion that the deadly hospital blast was caused by errant rocket fired by terrorists. He secures agreement for aid convoys to be allowed over the border. That's interesting as well. We are now going to get more humanitarian aid into that bit of Gaza on the provision that Hamas doesn't nick it. Well, good luck with that, as far as I'm concerned. The Garda House Ministry claims that 471 people were killed in what they are calling an Israeli massacre at that hospital. Let's go over to the Eye now. Mortgage hope leads the Eye. UK interest rate hike unlikely, experts predict. Well, this is all because of the inflation rate. The Bank of England's base rate looks set to stay at 5.25%. The Eye's panel of economists believes, well, if they're anything like the other economic experts that we've had in this country for a while, then they're obviously wrong, but offering a welcome reprieve to homeowners after 14 successive increases. I'm not sure that's a reprieve, is it? We want to see a reduction, don't we? There we go. The other top story for the Eye there is a picture story. Hospital blast, not Israel, insists the US. So those are the three front pages that have dropped so far. Now, with me tonight for the Media Buzz is the panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. We've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. So let's get stuck into our big debate, shall we? 60 Conservative MPs are calling on Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, to ban protests at the Cenotaph after pro-Palestinian activists sparked outrage last week. A stage for the Palestine Solidarity campaign was placed directly next to the memorial honouring Britain's war dead on Saturday. As part of a march down Whitehall that also saw a mob chase an Israel supporter, allegedly threatening to behead him, vile anti-Semitic chants and a statue of King George IV were vandalised with Free Palestine graffiti. In response to those scenes, the Common Sense group of Conservatives is writing to the Mayor of London, demanding him to, quote, stop extremists parading through the capital streets. Chance will be a fine thing. Earlier tonight, we spoke to people at another pro-Palestine protest taking place outside Downing Street, so we asked them whether or not Israel has a right to defend itself. This is what some of them had to tell us.
I just hope that the world leaders understand what's happening is genocide in Gaza. It's simple, free Palestine. It's as simple as that.
As a Muslim, I understand that Zionism and Zionists, they are the primary beneficiaries of Islamophobia in the UK. So if we want to tackle Islamophobia, and Muslims should be at the forefront of tackling Islamophobia, we also have to tackle Zionism.
Killing thousands and thousands of children, dropping bombs on hospitals. It's just unwarranted.
No one really seemed to say, yes, Israel has a right to defend itself there, did they? Concerning stuff. So, should Sadiq Khan listen and ban protests at that sacred cenotaph site? Christine Hamilton, I'll start with you. Should we ban protests near the cenotaph?
Well, I was absolutely horrified by what was happening at the cenotaph. It's been a sacred site. It's a very sombre memorial to the glorious dead. That is from the wars, world wars, defending this country. I think it was appalling. Everybody is now saying that it wasn't my fault, Gov. The Mayor of London is saying he didn't do it. Westminster City Council is saying they didn't approve it. Nobody approved it. In theory, there is, under the Metropolitan Police Act of, wait for it, 1839, you are not allowed to assemble or block the roads anywhere near Parliament because you mustn't impede the MPs. That is honoured in the default.
Do you remember?
But it's. I mean, you have to allow people's right to protest and people's right to march is one thing, but to do it and set up stall at the cenotaph, and people say, because I've put this out on Twitter and people have come down on me like a ton of bricks saying, oh, they were just about free Palestine. They weren't. They were chanting that terrible thing from the river to the sea, etc. Jeremy Corbyn, it was a totally anti-Semitic gathering and it should never have been allowed, and I think we never want to see anything like that again.
OK, well, yeah, I get that, and, you know, obviously not everybody there was chanting anti-Semitic things, but we can't get around the fact that a load of people were chanting that from the river to the sea, which Suella Braverman has said, came out and said is, you know, anti-Semitic tropes, etc. Adam, I'll go to you. I remember when Donald Trump came and Sadiq Khan was fined for a giant blimp of Trump in a nappy to be hoisted above the capital city. I'm right in saying there was a hoo-ha that he had to approve that?
Yeah.
My assumption would be that he's had to approve this as well.
I think I donated for the counter one, which was to have a giant blimp of
Sadiq Khan.
Sadiq Khan.
Did that get raised?
I can't remember, but I remember donating to it. But at the end of the day, if it wasn't for the people that died in these wars in this country, we wouldn't be sat here. We wouldn't have the freedoms that we have. You know, so we have to honour these people. It's because of them that we're able to live our lives. Now, I don't care who's protesting there. It's in bad taste. We've had Extinction Rebellion, them idiots, protesting there over the years. We've had BLM, and now we've had the Free Palestine. I don't believe anyone should disrespect this memorial. It's sacred, and it needs to be stopped. And one thing I will say is I can't believe there's only 60 Conservative MPs that have voiced this.
It's interesting.
If they was a Conservative party, in my view, it should be all of them, or the majority of them.
That is a good point. That is a good point, actually. Matthew, I'll bring you in. Now, some of the people that cenotaph commemorates are people who died fighting the actual Nazis.
Absolutely.
Right? And we now have potentially some people in front of that hosting a demonstration calling about Israel, and I do strongly suspect some of them Jews being wiped off the map. That is a massive juxtaposition.
It was incredibly disrespectful for anybody. Nobody should be having a protest, a stage by the cenotaph. For those who don't know sort of London's geography, the cenotaph's actually in the middle of the actual road that is Whitehall, so traffic runs either side of it. So therefore, lots of demonstrations, you have to walk past it if you're walking down to Parliament. But you walk past it, you don't use it as a literal stage to make your point. I mean, one thing is, anybody, they've clearly done their own cause a disservice, because even if people were prepared to listen to what they were saying, the fact they did it in such a disrespectful way to what, frankly, 99+% of the population think clearly damaged their own cause. I mean, I thought the protest was a moment sort of slightly ludicrous. So, look, yeah, absolutely, I think there needs... But we must protect our right to protest, but we must also protect the cenotaph as a space.
I've been on many protests, especially COVID and such, and it's always been legal protests. It's always had permission to do so. Someone gave permission to do this. we need to know who.
I think they were given permission for the march. They wouldn't. I don't think anybody gave them permission for the stage.
They're all
They just did
saying
it.
that nobody gave permission. They just
That's a massive
erected
security risk. Can I just say that's a
Of course
massive
it is.
security risk because you've got that
It's right outside Downing Street.
a major arterial route outside Downing Street, and are people genuinely asking us all to believe that nobody gave permission for a stage to be erected? I mean, that could have been packed full of explosives.
The Met Police have got a lot of questions to answer because the march was approved because you have to be approved for the roads to be closed, but the stage wasn't approved. But then why didn't they just stop them? You can't walk into White. Normally, if during the day, if anybody's like van backfires or something, they've got 50 police on them in Whitehall. Why weren't they stopped?
Well, somebody must have brought in all the wood.
It's not exactly inconspicuous, is it?
Exactly.
No.
They would have made a noise.
But what I want to know is the lorries that brought the stage in, did they pay the congestion charge?
And the ULEZ.
Did Sadiq Khan earn from it?
Did he earn from it? Maybe there you go. We'll have to wait and see. Right, now, look, get a load of this, OK? So democracy is apparently alive and well, but left-wing politicians in the Welsh Parliament haven't got the memo after dramatically banning GBNews from the airwaves in the Senedd. So Plaid Cymru's Ellen Jones, the Welsh speaker, announced members would no longer be able to tune in to our channel, My Dulcet Tones, because she described the broadcast as offensive content. Banning GBNews from Parliament TVs was supported by the likes of Labour's far-left Jenny Rathbone, but plenty are furious with what they call authoritarian censorship of the free press. So, look, who better to send over there than our very own Ben Leo, fan favourite, Housewives favourite. He went down to the Welsh Parliament today to try and find out why they'd done this and find the likes of Jones and Rathbone to ask for an explanation.
From my perspective, we live in 2023, we're in the modern world, we're entitled to have different opinions, and in that instance, I don't understand why on earth GB News has been pulled from our news channels here. The presiding officer did something that, quite frankly, would be seen as deemed as very shifty.
People are going to make those decisions. They should actually come and explain to the Chamber why they've made them, because there's been comments made on the BBC not calling Hamas a terrorist group. Are we going to ban the BBC in here for making those comments? I don't think so. This seems like victimisation of one news channel.
Any thoughts on GB News being banned from the Senedd? Any thoughts on the GB News ban in Parliament? The situation at the Welsh Parliament and Assembly here is that we've been banging the phones all day trying to speak to any of those on the left side of the argument, Labour, Plaid Cymru, to see what they have to say about the GB News ban. We'll keep trying to get them, especially Ellen Jones, the Speaker of the House, and Jenny Rathbone, who called GB News toxic. Why won't she talk?
Everything's overlapping, so the next one that she's got an interview with another broadcasting company.
Oh right.
Unfortunately, so she won't have time.
Who's that? The BBC?
See everything. I can't comment on that.
At the end of the day, choice is the driver of anything in a democracy, and to ban a broadcaster that's got an Ofcom licence and delivers an alternative view of things and is a mainstream broadcaster is completely undemocratic, and it's outrageous that it's been enforced on members and their staff. I mean, what does it say about democracy and what does it say about the Welsh Parliament?
Why won't Miss Jones or the others who have been supporting this, why won't they come out and speak to us today, or even on the phone or an email?
Well, they can't defend their position, can they? I mean, you don't front up when you can't defend your position. It is undemocratic, it's censorship. We will be pushing for the reinstatement of GB News, but what I would say to your viewers is make sure you keep watching GB News, make a difference and make your voices heard.
Right, OK. Well, the instigator of the ban, Plaid Cymru Speaker Ellen Jones, refused to raise the Israeli flag at Parliament last week in the wake of the Hamas atrocities. Make of that what you will. Very quickly, panel, Christine.
Well, having spent 5 years working at the Welsh Parliament, because my husband was a member there, I am only astonished that they didn't do this earlier. They are the most left-wing, etc., etc. By the way, going back to an earlier, they call themselves a nation of sanctuary. So let's see how many refugees they take.
Interesting, Adam.
We have on this channel, we have Labour MPs contribute to shows. We have Labour mayors give us exclusives. And these idiots in Wales want to ban the channel that their English counterparts are part of.
I mean,
I'm just gutted that my Welsh comrades can't hear my fantastic analysis of the day's events.
This is it.
So, I mean, look, it's just censorship is daft, and it makes people think there's a conspiracy theory. So I would, I'm glad it's been led by the Plaid Speaker. I hope that the Labour's in the majority kicks up a fuss. And
it's also genuinely quite pathetic, right? Seriously,
they're frightened of the competition of ideas. That's what
but there's no need to be. Just come on and have a chat. And actually, in the end, very often we end up having a laugh about
their inadequacy, frankly.
And they're not going to appear on the new Welsh language hour you're going to be presenting, Patrick, soon.
Well, exactly. Yes. No, I will be. It'll be a niche show. That mainly centres around me desperately trying and failing to learn the Welsh language. But coming up, with shoplifting costing British shops almost £1 billion last year, our toothless police, don't actually always blame the police, but anyway, seem incapable of tackling the crime wave. So, is Britain's first private police force, that's right, we now have private police forces, which has successfully prosecuted almost 300 thieves already. Is that the answer to our scourge of shoplifting? My expert panel will debate that very shortly, then we might bring this lot in as well. And next, the XL bully dogs due to be banned in the UK after a string of fatal attacks. I am joined by a bloke from the States, Dave Wilson. This is the guy who bred the first ever XL bully back in the 90s. I've got to ask him, does he hold himself responsible for the panic that's brought to Britain's streets by these dogs? Stay tuned.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio. Now, the controversial XL Bully dog breed had not been seen in the UK before 2014, but has this year been responsible for several high-profile attacks that have often tragically proved fatal. The popularity of the breed soared during COVID, but their reputation for unpredictable attacks led to Rishi Sunak announcing a nationwide ban just last month, which will come into force from 2025. Now, interestingly, XL Bullies don't seem to be causing the same problems in their home country, the United States, where the breed was originally created back in the 1990s. So Dave Wilson, the man who bred the first ever XL Bully, joins me live from the States tonight to, I believe, defend the dogs that he says are misunderstood. Look, Dave, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show, my good man. I appreciate it. I've got to ask, I mean, do you feel...
Thanks for having me.
Oh, that's all right, mate. Do you feel a bit responsible for some of the Brits who've died as a result of the dog breed that you created?
Well, just quickly, I didn't create the first XL Bully. I created the American Bully breed, which is a breed broken up into 3 varieties: Pocket, Standard, and XL. They're all separated by height. And I think it needs to be clear that none of these situations, you're not hearing any of this with the Pocket American Bullies. You're not hearing any of this with the Standard American Bullies. None of that's going on in your country. And nor anywhere around the world are we hearing this with the XL variety of the American Bully. So I think a lot of what's happening and what's proven today, if you watch the debate today, that there's just a lot of false identity happening right now. There's a lot of different dogs being labeled as such, and the actual data out there, it isn't accurate. And that was proven today in the debate that they had earlier today. So, I mean, I do feel compassion for anybody that's been mauled by a dog. I think it's horrible, but I also don't feel that it's right to false label a breed for something that there's actually no accurate data to back that.
Yeah, I mean, something along the lines of 70% of fatal dog attacks in this country are attributed to XL Bullies. I mean, do you think that is a coincidence?
I mean, we've looked at the data, and the data is actually really not there to back that claim. So that claim is a false claim because it's been proven that it hasn't been that way. So I think that the issue over there, obviously, if you really have to think with common sense. If you're not hearing that the Pockets in the standards of this breed have any incidents in England whatsoever, and you're not hearing that the XL variety of the breed is having any incidents anywhere around the world, there's something isolated to the UK that's going on, and a lot of that is actual false identity. I mean, obviously, yes, you have an influx of dogs during COVID. You have irresponsible owners. You have people that do the wrong things.
Well, let me ask you that then, Dave. I mean, there is this kind of age-old debate between, is it the dog's fault or is it the owner's fault? And I've got to be honest, about 99% of the time, it's my instinct to come down on the side of it being the owner's fault. Okay. It sounds to me like you come down on, you say that 100% of the time, Dave.
Yeah, 100%, because you can statistically prove that there's no such thing as a dangerous breed if you compare the amount of dogs versus the actual attacks of a dog breed. So it always falls on the owners. And that's really where the laws and everything need to be based around the owners. You can't discriminate against any one breed, especially in our breed. We can statistically prove that this isn't an aggressive breed at all.
I mean, look, I've got to dispute that because we have had numerous attacks recently, just in the last few months, that have all been XL Bullies, right? More so than you get from Golden Labradors.
I'm a dog expert. I am a dog expert, and I watched a lot of these attacks. And in viewing these attacks, I've seen some dogs that were obviously pit bulls. I've seen dogs that were obviously Mastiff crosses. So you have
so you think people have jumped on this and gone, that's a massive dog, we'll call it an XL Bully, and actually it's not an XL Bully. Something else has got involved there somewhere along the way.
I believe a good percentage of it is correct, yes. That it's just people running on a generic term, without actually having the data to back up and say this is what it really was.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we've got a couple of headlines for you. I'll just put these to you. So this is the Metro. Man mauled to death by 2 XL Bullies. Yeah, Independent. Mother screams heard as boy. I can't see how old that was anyway. Dies for XL Bully. XL Bully shot dead after mauling owner. What an XL bully dog attack feels like. Grief, I imagine bad. Crooks are using bully XL dogs as weapons to avoid police searches. Yeah, look, you get the gist, Dave. There's a lot of these. To be fair, I mean, you look. I know, I get his headlines. I'm not trying to. This isn't like some kind of gotcha moment, right? I know it's just headlines.
No. But I mean, you all had a debate today. You had the effort and all those things today, and they actually show that they don't have accurate data. I mean, it was pretty clear today that the data isn't accurate. So just because a headline is stating this is something doesn't mean there's truth to it. And like I said, I created this breed. Just so you understand, if this breed is composed by 3 varieties broken down by height, how come there's no attacks of the pockets? How come there's no attacks
interesting.
of the standards?
That's interesting. Okay, so go on, educate me, and maybe everybody else knew this. Maybe I'm just a thicko here. But so the only difference you're saying between an XL bully, a pocket bully, and whatever else it was is just the height. It's nothing else.
Nothing else. Correct.
So
they're just broken up by height.
So the logic there would be that we should be getting the same amount of attacks from, from the other kind of aspects of the bully dog, if it was a dangerous breed.
Exactly. You would see the attacks from the other varieties, and also you would see XL bully attacks around the world if it was actually really the breed, which you don't see. I mean, America has the largest influx of them anywhere in the world, and we don't have this situation here in America. So there's something different going on over there, and I believe it's false labeling. I mean, I believe it's a culmination of different things. False labeling of breeds. I believe it's a lot of inexperienced people that got dogs during COVID that probably aren't responsible dog owners. You probably have an element of people that are doing the wrong thing with their dog, but it's...
Do you still breed? Do you still breed them?
Yeah, I still breed them, but very seldomly, because my job is to go around the world. We do 7 or 8 dog shows every weekend around the world with families and kids, and great. I mean, there's so much proof out there that this is such a docile breed that to me, it's quite ridiculous to think that anybody would think that this breed is a dangerous breed. So there's something unique going on there that I believe is false labeling.
Okay, all right. All right, look, Dave, thank you very much. It's great to have you on the show. And, I think I could have dragged this on for quite a bit longer, actually, but we are out of time. Dave Wilson there, the chap, the bloke who created not just the XL bully, but a whole variety of different bullies as well. Look, coming up in Uncancelled, as Harry and Meghan jet off in a private plane to an island that billionaires go to escape millionaires. Yeah, I know. Does their hypocrisy over climate change have no bounds? I will be asking that to esteemed royal biographer. That's Angela Levin. She's coming up very, very shortly. She's also tackling rumours that one of the pair has started house hunting back in the UK. You won't want to miss that. But right next, in the media buzz, with shoplifting costing British shops almost £1 billion a year, are police still seem incapable of tackling the crime wave? So, is Britain's first ever private police force, which has successfully prosecuted nearly 300 thieves already, the answer to this scourge of shoplifting? Personally, anything that I think catches thieves is a good thing. I've got my expert panel to debate that. We're back in 3.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's return now to tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. More front pages have just been delivered. We start with The Sun. Biden, it wasn't Israel. Jihadi rocket-blamed picture of a wounded child. Let's move on now to The Mirror, where we've got don't make the same mistakes that we did. Again, another distressing image of a bloodied boy in the hospital in Gaza. Biden urges leaders to avoid 9/11 aggression. That's Biden's message to Israel. We'll go to the Daily Mail now. Israeli President blasts atrocious BBC over Hamas. In his first interview since war erupted, head of state Benjamin Netanyahu slams the corporation's unbelievable failure to label the group as terrorists. Right, just at the top of that page as well, we've got King Charles. His plea to the nation, don't let the acrimony and rancour on social media debate corrode our national life. King Charles wading in. We'll have a bit more on that later, actually. We'll finish off with The Guardian, why not? Don't be consumed by rage, Biden tells Israel. There's a theme here, isn't there, with the front pages? Just down the side panel, we've got they knew the risks, but had nowhere else to go. Gaza blast. Interesting whether or not they're talking about the potential for Hamas terrorists there firing rockets out of a cemetery behind a hospital, or indeed those people fleeing. There we go. And Joan Bakewell, for what it's worth, not of the tart variety, saying, I've been pleased not to be married for the last 20 years. Right, moving on. More on the Media Buzz now with tonight's panel. Author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, yes. We've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. So, onwards, head first towards lawless Britain, which has seen shoplifting soar in recent times by 24%. Last year alone, it cost British traders almost £1 billion a year. That's just the financial cost. I think the emotional and personal cost of having someone with a machete rock up at your corner shop and nick everything is probably even worse. But as the police and courts fail miserably to tackle the scourge of shoplifting, a firm dubbed Britain's first private police force is succeeding. TMI, I spelt like the two that you've got in your head, employs 100 uniformed staff and a further 28 in plain clothes, who are now taking a suspected burglar to court for the very first time after police refused to investigate his alleged supermarket shoplifting. In fact, using its own team of lawyers, TMI has so far prosecuted 300 thieves in court, remarkably winning 299 of the 300 cases. So, Adam, are private police firms like these a blessing for Britain or a sign that the government has given up on law and order?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. I think they're needed for low-level crime like this that the police just cannot find the time or the manpower to deal with. So I would rather not live in a lawless Britain. Again, I've got 3 children. I want it to be as safe, as possible in society. So as long as they aren't given too many powers and they don't abuse them powers, they are regulated, it's a good thing. But let's also say we've had 13 years of a Tory government and policing has got worse. So there's no, we can't take the blame away from the talk of the Conservative Party, because it has got worse.
I'll be honest with you, right? I don't mind this. I absolutely don't mind it. I think a lot of these people will be ex-coppers. A lot of them might even be ex-military, the kind of people that we'd want doing it. And as long as somebody is catching somebody who is accused of nicking, you know, 500 quid's worth of Prosecco or Passe or whatever the heck it is from a shop, if the police aren't doing that, somebody else is, I don't mind.
Absolutely. Well, the police have said that they're not going to investigate shoplifting crime. So what the hell is a firm shop, even if it's a big shop, or what are they supposed to do? The government has, through the police, has given up, just like they've given up on the health service, which is why so many people have given up on the health service, which is why so many have to go private. Well, and I'm not surprised that some of these firms, if they can afford it, are going to take on private. Of course they are.
You say that. I mean, I don't mind.
It's stealing, shoplifting. It's a lovely, cosy term. And if you're taking something from a big company, there's nobody really suffers, do they?
Well, that's what they say.
But they do. Everybody suffers. And it is stealing, and it's a crime. The police should investigate.
Let's just remember
and they ignore
that
it.
low-level crime like stealing funds drug abuse, and drug abuse leads to further crime. So it's a spiralling, you know, a downward spiral of society.
I think police are abrogating their responsibility.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely it, Christine. I mean, I think clearly the police resources are stretched, and people are going to moan, but we still don't have the same number of police officers per head of population we had when Labour was in power, and it is extraordinary. That
but hang on a minute. A lot of that does have to do with rapid population growth.
I was going to say,
but therefore the number of police needs to keep up with that. So they should have been recruiting more police and not cutting them. We went to the lowest number of police in modern times earlier in this Conservative government. To be fair to Boris, it's one of the few things he did actually deliver on was recruiting more police officers, but the numbers had got really low. But I think it's really important that the police investigate the gangs that are doing the shoplifting. It's not people sticking one tin of baked beans down their sweaters. These are organised gangs.
Yes, they are.
Look, we've just about got time. I'm going to land this on you, right? Because we did kind of talk about this a bit earlier on, but I want to revisit it. It's on the front of the Metro tonight, and it's 11 years for this £50 million UK dinghy kingpin. If you're just joining us, no, it's not a terrible dream. A bloke who was responsible, genuinely, for 1/5 of the Channel migrant crossings a couple of years ago. 50 million quid, supposedly, this people smuggling ring has gained. 11 years he's been sentenced to. Himself, by the way, is an Iranian asylum seeker, was living in Ilford. So all this idea that they're all living somewhere in the mountains in, Morocco, and we can't possibly get hold of them. This guy's living in East London and have been for years. Responsible for this. 11 years he's got, and he'll be serving that in a Belgian prison. I'm not sure if we're able to deport him afterwards. Possibly not if he's already successfully achieved asylum. And even if we did deport him, if anyone can find their way back into Europe, it's Mr. Human trafficking. So, this is, I think, an absolute disgrace, Adam.
11 years, he'd be out in 6, maybe 7, with good behaviour.
With millions in the bank.
With millions in the bank. No disrespect. There's been people in my area that have got longer sentences for selling illegal plants. Yeah. So, the justice system in this country is an absolute joke. And it's not just the money that they've earned there. That money goes into prostitution. It goes into other really nasty things.
And that's what I mean. Look, that's one of the reasons why Keir Starmer said he'd use terrorism legislation, which has much harder sentences against these people.
It's got to be life. It's got to be mandatory life, surely.
Well, there is no, as far as I'm aware, there is no precedent for anybody sentencing somebody for this, because this is the first time anybody's been brought before the courts. So what on earth was, I don't know who it was the judge thinking of, handing down such a pathetic sentence?
You know what message this sends serious? So this is a crime that
you can get away with it.
That incorporates putting people in dinghies that cross the busiest shipping lane in the world. At huge risk. A potential there for, at least, what would you say, corporate manslaughter?
Yes, absolutely.
Then you've got breaking into a series of countries. You've got all of the different bribery and everything that goes with it. And the grand culmination of all of those things is 11 years for a bloke who was right at the top.
And I could possibly get 2 years for misgendering someone.
You would get,
Exactly.
Remarkable.
With any luck, he might squeal in prison and bring a few more people down with him.
Let's hope they get a proceeds of crime order against him. But I wouldn't hold my breath.
If they can, but I'm just not sure this is going to deter anyone. Can I just ask that question? I know it might seem a bit unsavoury to us, but if somebody did slap down 20 million quid in front of you and said, do you fancy doing 7 years in Nick? And then when you come out, it's 20 million quid.
In Belgium?
No, I wouldn't.
I've got kids. I couldn't not see my kids for that.
Have you been inside a prison, Patrick?
Well, maybe that makes me a bad person. I thought I'd get a better response from that. And I said straight in there. I tell you, I'd be straight in there.
No way.
Patrick, I don't need another 20 million, mate.
You don't? Oh, there it's good, lads.
Brooksy, the drinks are on you.
All right, we've got a little bit of interesting developments for you now. Interesting developments. This was not in the script when we planned this show. Breaking tonight. Protesters have taken over the US Capitol to demand a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The demonstration, reportedly organised by a left-wing Jewish group, comes a day after the bombing of a hospital which claimed the lives of at least 500 Palestinians. More than 100 arrests have been made so far. I think we can have a look at now, we can, at some of these extraordinary pictures. This is ongoing right now at the Capitol. Let's take it away, come on. Right, so that appears to be a load of pro-Israelis in the Capitol building sitting in there saying that they want a ceasefire. So what's going on at the moment?
How do they allow that? How do they allow them to get in?
Well, if it's anything like the last one, they'll just let them in, won't they?
Well, they're mad. I mean, you wouldn't allow that in the Westminster Central Hall, would you?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you just people who are allowed in, obviously, if they just decide to sit down and start chanting.
Yeah, but when you realise there's a protest going on, you shut the doors, you say no.
On the January 6th one, they was given a guided tour before the police.
Yes, that's very true.
OK, yeah, minor point of clarification. I think they are Jewish people for peace, not necessarily pro-Israeli. There we go. It's a, for want of a better phrase, a minefield, that part of the world at the moment, isn't it? But coming up, former Chancellor Lord Nigel Lawson, easy for me to say, and Sadiq Khan are nominated for awards in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But do either of them win one of tonight's crowns? Find out shortly. But next, in Uncancelled, as Harry and Meghan jet off in a private plane to an island where billionaires go to escape millionaires, does their climate change hypocrisy have no bounds, I will ask? Esteemed royal biographer Angela Levin next, who also is tackling rumours that one of those pair is house hunting back in the UK. But who could it be? Back in 2.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified.
I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio. Time now for Uncancelled with top royal author Angela Levin. And the Duke... I always get that wrong. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have flown back into the headlines in style after being papped arriving at an exclusive Caribbean island after a gas-guzzling private jet flight. Pictures from Mail Online show Harry and Meghan on the tarmac after jetting to the tiny island. Said to be where billionaires get away from mere millionaires for a holiday without their kids. That's all right for some, isn't it? Now, I don't begrudge anyone travelling by private jet, but it's a bit rich for eco-preacher Harry, who said that he's only going to have 2 kids to save the planet, to be whizzing around like this. Now, Angela Levin joins me. Are these 2 hypocrites Or is private jets just a necessity to escape millionaires?
No, no, no. They are total hypocrites. And they're getting snottier and snottier and as they spend more time together. And actually, they feel that what they do is more important than what anyone else does. And they don't have to toe the line, but they just tell other people what to do. I mean, they talked about mental health, and Meghan was talking about having the parents there and doing all that, so it's all very easy. But she doesn't speak to her father, and she's the last person with the family. And Harry was very rude, saying that if you are someone who lives in the country, you won't know anything about social media. So that's why he has to tell them. So, you know, it's very important.
Ridiculous. I mean, sorry,
exactly.
but that is but the sense of entitlement.
Exactly.
He thinks he's the Dalai Lama or something. Which
Yes.
is mental.
So it's extremely rude. And then what Meghan said with Oprah, that the real title she cares about is being a mom.
Yes.
And
sorry, I'm just going to throw up a little bit in my mouth. But, OK, what would you say to the people who go, they are the most packed couple in the world, right? They need privacy more than anybody else. They're going to be on a holiday. She might not want bikini pictures out there, all of that stuff, which I can understand. They might want to relax. So they've got to go to an island where billionaires escape millionaires.
No, it's not a case of relaxing. It's a case of seeing the billionaires who can say, here I am too.
Oh, you think it's networking?
That's the thing. Of course
it's
networking.
You think they go
it's
there
meeting the people that she wants to use.
Oh.
And it's actually sort of shining, and that's her, she can tick that. I think she's got lots of boxes in her head of ticking what she does.
Are you jealous? Would you like to be on Billionaire Island?
No, no, I wouldn't, because I think all the thing that you care about is money, then it's really pathetic.
Also, you do know, I mean, proper billionaires like yourself don't need to be seen on Billionaire Island, do they? I mean, that's it. But it's the private jet thing, though, isn't it? I mean, again, seriously, do they lose all right to lecture us about anything to do with the climate when you literally take a private jet to a billionaire's island?
I don't think they've got the right to tell us what to do about anything in any area, actually. They're not royals. They haven't got the experience. It's all about them. They've got their own ideas of what they're going to do, so they get money, so they can use people and get more and more up, making these billionaires and trillionaires and going on for that. But I think it's shocking and very distasteful.
OK. OK, well, there you go. I mean, I've got to be honest with you, part of me does want to get on a private jet to Billionaire's Island, but I'm not lecturing people about the climate. This is the thing, I'm not the one lecturing people. I'll hold my hands up and go, that sounds like a great holiday. But, Angela, reports today suggest that Harry and Meghan are divided over a move back to the UK as the Duke starts house hunting again in London.
Yes.
So, is that true? What's going on? Where's he going to live?
Well, it seems to be true, but he's not going to ask his father. He's not going to try and get a piece of royal land. He's going to get his own house that he wants.
You mean that a man in his, how old is he, early 40s? He's going to stand on his own 2 feet?
No, he won't, because he'll be then asking for money from his father, don't you worry.
Yeah.
But I think but Meghan doesn't want to come, we know that, but he does. And people say he wants to meet all his family again and get the kids to know them. That's nonsense, isn't it? Because just a month ago, they were looking in a part of Los Angeles where all the top pop people were there, and they wanted to live there. Now they want to live in London. I think it's just a way of getting onto the headlines, and I think it's nonsense. But I think they will be dreadful for King Charles, because I think they will come here, they will try and crush and destroy what they're doing. And
how would they do that then? So what do you think?
They find out what they're going to happen, and they'll do it their way the day before and ruin it.
Do you think, seriously?
Oh, yes, but that's what they did a couple of years ago in September, you know, for the army. They did that in America. You know, they did it their own way.
What I find bizarre would be that if you've slated a country like they have, they've slated Britain, they've slated, I would argue, the views of the majority of the British people, and then fled because you said that there was no other choice. Why on earth? I mean, there's loads of other countries out there. Why would you choose to come back?
Because I think they want to get their own back. Harry's determined to get his father to apologise to his wife. He must have it, and that's why he'll come back and he'll go anywhere. They are no longer a nice couple. They are there to get better and to take advantage of it, and they will be able to know what's going on and then use it to their own.
I wonder whether, remarkably, and I don't very often say this given we're just in a segment on lawless Britain, right, but I wonder whether or not they've thought that it might be better for their kids to go to school in a country where people don't walk into school with guns. I mean, that might be an option for them. Maybe that's what it is. We'll have to wait and see, though, won't we?
We will.
Wait and see. All right, Angela, look, thank you very, very much. Angela Levin, they're always a fan favourite, so thank you very, very much. Right, stay where you are, because otherwise you'll be caught on camera. It's time now for today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Right. With me to reveal theirs is my panel. We're going to start with you, Christine. Go on. Who is... we're going Greatest Britain first?
My Greatest Britain is Nigel Lawson, whose memorial service was yesterday in London. He was the greatest post-war Chancellor. He provided the intellectual basis for the tax cutting, the privatisation, which steamrolled the Thatcher government, and he spearheaded Britain's recovery. A lot of it's been wasted now, but Nigel Lawson.
OK, that's your Greatest Britain, and we will go over to you, Adam. Go on.
Mine is Lord Markham for correcting the General Medical Council that biological sex matters after they removed the word mother from maternity guidance.
OK, I know you feel very, very strongly about that. Matthew?
Mine are the tens of thousands of Polish citizens who live in Britain who voted in such numbers at the weekend's vital election. They're still counting the votes.
You know, right, hang on a second. It's one thing, right, picking foreign-born people. It's another thing picking loads of them, right? So we're going to have to go plural and foreign-born. Anyway, OK, I'm being told to hurry up. I can't remember who I went for. I think I went for Adam's one. Yeah, I did. There we go. Well done. Tonight's Greatest Britain is Lord Markham. Right, Union Jackass, Christine Hamilton, take it away.
Well, I don't know who it is, but it's whoever organised and declared that today, believe it or not, is International Pronouns Day. Jackass.
Mine is Sadiq Khan, again, for overseeing the authorities that allowed the protest near the cenotaph. Disgraceful.
Matthew,
mine is steakhouse chain Miller & Carter, who've been criticised for taking payments from waiters' tips to upgrade the wages of chefs.
Right, that's, by the way, can I just say, my favourite restaurant chain? So you can do one. But they've got here, team members have not and will never be asked to contribute towards tips from their own remuneration and are always paid at or above national minimum wage. Matthew, I would recommend the T-bone medium rare. Right,
you can take me, Patrick.
I've got for Sadiq Khan, who's today's Union Jackass. Right, look, thank you very, very much to my wonderful panel and to everybody who has been tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow from 9 p.m. Next up, of course, it's Headliners. Good night. Mwah.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Storm Babette arrives over the next 24 hours, bringing with it exceptional rainfall for eastern Scotland in particular. Red warning has been issued. Here's Babette for the rest of Wednesday, moving into central parts of the UK. It's been a wet day for southern areas, but that rain's now moving into North Wales, the Midlands, Northern England and Northern Ireland overnight, especially heavy across Northern Ireland with the risk of 30 to 50 or even 60 millimetres by the end of the night, and so that could cause some disruption by dawn. Otherwise, it's drying up a little towards the south. It stays blustery, it stays cloudy, and as a result, it's going to be a mild start to Thursday, but it is going to be an unpleasant start for many. Wet and windy weather, strong gusts of wind associated with Storm Babette, but then increasingly wet and windy for central and northern Scotland in particular, with, in places, 70 or even 80 mile-per-hour wind gusts, and that wind driving heavy and persistent rain into eastern Scotland in particular. Angus and Aberdeenshire, seeing that rainfall really build up over the next 48 hours, up until the weekend, with, in places, 200 to 250 millimetres of rainfall. In one or two spots could see twice October's average rainfall fall in just a few days. That would cause serious amounts of flooding, combined with strong winds. That's why there's...
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's on your teeth.
It's on your teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
You're with GB News and the top story tonight. The Prime Minister is travelling to Israel as part of a 2-day trip to the Middle East in what Downing Street explains as help to avoid a dangerous escalation of the conflict. Rishi Sunak will arrive in Israel tomorrow morning and is due to meet the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and President Herzog before travelling to other countries in the region. He's expected to share his condolences for the loss of life in Israel and Gaza. Well, the Prime Minister was speaking today in Clacton on